Today's story is a folktale from India called The Redbud Tree. Once upon a time, 4 young princes heard a story about a certain wonderful tree called the Redbud Tree. None of them had ever seen a redbud tree, and each prince wished to be the first to see one. The redbud tree was legendary for its beauty. It only grew in the most distant mountain forests. It had an elegant trunk in winter. It was covered in delicate springtime flowers. In summer, its shiny, smooth leaves reflected the sunlight, and intricate seed pods appeared in the fall. Of course, this was the story the country folk recounted, for few city dwellers had ever laid eyes upon this tree. A redbud tree could be growing in the middle of their fair city, yet no city dweller would know. So one day the eldest prince asked the driver of the king's chariot to take him deep into the woods where the tree grew. The driver had grown up in the mountains and knew the location of a stand of redbud trees, and took his young master there. It was still very early in the spring, and the tree had no leaves nor buds. It was black and bare like a dead tree. The prince could not understand why this was called the redbud tree. Instead, he decided the redbud tree was one of the ugliest trees he had ever seen. Later in the spring, the next son went with the driver of the king's chariot to see the redbud tree. At this time, it was covered with red buds, and it was beautiful to behold. It was indeed a tree of legend. The tree was also covered with green leaves when the third son went into the woods a little later to see it. He was perplexed, but he could see no reason for calling it a redbud tree. In fact, he began wondering about the feeble-mindedness of the country folk, if this is what they called a redbud tree. Some time after this, the youngest prince begged to be taken to the redbud tree. By this time it was covered with little bean pods. He also left confused by the tree's appearance. He could not believe one of his brothers extolled the beauty of this tree. Why, the bean pods weren't even red. When he came back from the woods, he ran into the garden where his brothers were playing, saying, "I have seen the redbud tree, brothers. You have been deceived. There are no red buds on it." "I have the same opinion. It did not look like much of a tree to me. It was ugly," said the first brother. "What makes you say that?" said the second son. "The tree has hundreds of beautiful red buds. This is why it's called the redbud tree of legend." The third prince said, "Red buds, did you say? Why did you say it has red buds? It is covered with green leaves." The prince, who had just seen the tree, laughed at his brothers, and he said, "I have just seen that tree, and it is not like a dead tree. It has neither red buds nor green leaves. It is covered with little bean pods." The king heard them, came over, and waited until they stopped talking. Then he said, "My sons, you have all 4 seen the same tree, but each of you saw it at a different time of year. Each of you claims to know the truth of the redbud tree, but do you not see your brothers are also correct in their own way? You may have your own truth, but none of you have the truth, because you have not seen the tree in every season. It is important for you to learn that you are limited by your own experience and should be open to hearing the views of others."